Did you know that before time had a name, before the stars were lit or the earth was shaped, there was a sound? It was the sound of absolute silence, a deep and yawning emptiness, so profound you could feel it in your bones. It was a place of pure potential, a cosmic stage waiting for its first actors. Before you get too comfortable, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel to encourage me to make more content like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights and let's begin tonight's journey. You are floating now in that great and silent void. It has a name, Ginnungagap. The name itself feels ancient, a rumble in the chest. There is no up or down, no light or dark in the way you understand it. There is only an endless expanse, a gap between two primal forces. To one side, you feel an impossible cold radiating outward. This is Niflheim, a realm of primordial ice, fog, and mist. From it, venomous rivers, the Ilavega, flow into the void, freezing instantly into colossal blocks of rime and ice. The cold is so intense it doesn't just bite. It feels like it could shatter the very idea of warmth. On the other side, you sense a blistering, searing heat. This is Muspelheim, the land of fire. It is a place of eternal flames, molten rock, and sizzling sparks, guarded by the fire giant Surtur. The air here, if you could call it air, shimmers with a heat that could unmake worlds. You watch as these two extremes reach for each other across the great emptiness of Ginnungagap. The fiery winds from Muspelheim drift across the void and touch the frozen venom of Niflheim, and a strange thing begins to happen. The ice doesn't just melt, it begins to thaw and drip, and within those drops, life stirs. The raw power of fire and ice, creation and destruction, meet in the middle. From this cosmic thaw, a shape begins to form. It is immense, larger than any mountain you could ever imagine, a humanoid figure made of frost and chaos. This is Ymir, the first being, the ancestor of all giants. He is not good or evil, he is simply primal energy given form. As Ymir sleeps in the warmth of the void, he begins to sweat. From the sweat of his armpit, a male and a female giant are born, and by rubbing his legs together, he sires a monstrous son with 6 heads. This is how the race of frost giants began, not from love or intention, but from the simple, strange biology of a cosmic being. Historians still debate whether this creation narrative was a purely organic Norse concept or if it borrowed elements from earlier Mesopotamian myths, which also featured primal chaos and the bodies of divine beings forming the world. As Ymir's new children cry out, they are hungry, and the universe provides. From the same melting rime, a second creature forms. It is a cow of cosmic proportions. Her name is Ojumbla, and from her udders flow for rivers of milk to nourish the first giant and his strange new family. As the giant Ymir and his brood feast on the milk of Ojumbla, the cosmic cow herself is also hungry. You watch her turn to the great blocks of salty rime that litter the void. She begins to lick one, her great rough tongue rasping against the ancient ice. For a full day she licks, and by the evening, a head of hair is revealed. On the second day, she licks again, and a man's head emerges from the ice. On the third day, the entire being is freed. He is Bori, the first of the gods. He is powerful and beautiful, born not of chaos and sweat, but carved from the primordial ice by the patient work of nature. Bori soon has a son, named Bor, who in time takes a wife from the other side of the void. Her name is Bestla, and she is the daughter of a frost giant. It's a detail that is easy to miss, but it's crucial. The gods and giants are not separate species, they are family, a fact that will make their eternal conflict all the more tragic. Bor and Bestla have 3 sons. The first is Odin, the second is Vili, and the third is Vi. As these 3 brothers grow to manhood, they look upon the world they inhabit, this strange place of fire, ice, and roaring, chaotic giants led by the brutish Ymir. They feel a yearning for order, for structure, for a cosmos with meaning and purpose. They see Ymir as a force of untamed, mindless creation, and they decide that to build a true world, the first being must die. So, you watch as the three young gods confront their own ancestor. The battle is cataclysmic. It is a war of order against chaos, of intention against raw, untamed existence. The brothers, with their combined strength and divine will, overwhelm the great giant. They slay Ymir, and in that moment of foundational violence, the true act of creation can finally begin. The sheer volume of blood that pours from Ymir's wounds is staggering. It creates a deluge, a red tide that floods the void and drowns all of the frost giants. All except for one named Bergelmir and his wife, who wisely scramble onto a wooden chest and float to safety, ensuring their kind will survive to forever be a thorn in the side of the gods. Scholars often highlight the parallels between this flood and other ancient deluge myths, suggesting a shared human story about destruction preceding a new beginning. Once the crimson tide recedes, the brothers begin their grim and sacred work. They drag Ymir's colossal corpse to the center of Ginnungagap. From his flesh, they fashion the earth and the soil. From his unbroken bones, they raise the mountains. His teeth and the shattered fragments of his jawbone become the rocks and pebbles that you might one day hold in your hand. His hair becomes the trees and all the vegetation. They then take his enormous hollow skull and set it over the earth to form the dome of the sky. To hold it in place, they post a dwarf at each of the four corners, their names forever tied to the cardinal directions: Nordri, Sudri, Ostri, and Westri. You see them toss Ymir's brains into the sky, where they drift and bunch together to become the clouds. Finally, Odin and his brothers catch the glowing embers and sparks that fly out of Muspelheim, and they set them in the sky as the sun, the moon, and the stars. They have not just killed a giant, they have deconstructed a god to construct a universe. Now that the world of flesh and bone has been formed, you see a new life force emerge from its very center. A seed sprouts, and from it grows a tree of impossible scale. This is Yggdrasil, the world tree, an immense and ancient ash tree. Its trunk is the pillar that supports the entire cosmos, a living axis around which everything revolves. You crane your neck to look up, but its highest branches are lost in the cosmic mists, brushing against the stars you just saw being made. Its leaves are vast and green, and from them drips a sweet dew that nourishes the world. Below, its three great roots delve deep into the fabric of reality, anchoring creation itself. This tree is not just a part of the world, it is the world, and it holds within its boughs and roots the 9 realms. You feel a gentle pull, a guide to explore this new, structured universe. At the very top, in the sunlit canopy, is Asgard, the home of the Aesir gods. You see it as a celestial fortress, a city of gold and silver with high walls to protect it from the giants. Its great halls gleam, and from its edge, a shimmering, burning rainbow bridge called Bifrost Arches down toward the mortal world. Nearby is Vanaheim, home of the other tribe of gods, the Vanir. This realm feels different, less like a fortress and more like a lush, fertile garden filled with ancient magic and a deep connection to the natural world. Also, in the upper branches is Alfheim, the domain of the light elves, beings of breathtaking beauty who are masters of art and magic, and whose home is bathed in an ethereal, gentle light. Hanging in the middle branches, nestled securely, is Midgard, the realm of humankind. This is your world. To protect it from the marauding giants, the gods took the immense eyebrows of Ymir and fashioned them into a defensive wall around it. It's a strangely intimate detail, using a piece of a face to protect a world. Below Midgard, in the darker, gnarled branches, you find Jotunheimr, the world of the giants. It is a wild, untamed land of towering mountains, dark forests, and crushing ice, a place of raw, chaotic power. Deeper still, underground and among the roots, lies Svartalfheim, the realm of the dwarves, who are also sometimes called dark elves. Here, in a labyrinth of caves and magnificent underground forges, these master craftsmen hammer out the treasures of the gods. The three great roots of Yggdrasil lead to three distinct and vital sources. One root finds its nourishment in Asgard, by the Well of Ore. Here, you see three women of immense gravity and power. They are the Norns, the weavers of fate. Their names are Ore, representing what has been Vergondi, what is in the process of becoming, and Skuld, what shall be. They spin the threads of life for every being in the cosmos, gods included, and not even Odin can alter their designs. A second route plunges down into Jotunheimr, drawing water from the Well of Mimir, the spring of wisdom and knowledge. The third and final route reaches into the primordial cold of Nibelheim, where it is gnawed upon eternally by the fearsome dragon, Unhggr, or Malice Striker. This constant damage is a reminder that even the pillar of the universe is not immune to decay. An amusing and strange curiosity of this cosmic ecosystem is the squirrel, Ratatoskr, who spends all of his time scurrying up and down the trunk of Yggdrasil, carrying insulting messages between the eagle perched at the top and the dragon, Nhggr, at the bottom. His sole purpose appears to be stoking cosmic animosity. The exact layout of the 9 worlds is a topic of intense academic debate, as the ancient texts are often poetic and metaphorical rather than providing a clear, consistent map of the cosmos. For a time, there is a fragile peace in the new cosmos, but the universe is now home to 2 distinct families of gods, and their natures are as different as stone and soil. In Asgard, you see the Aesir. They are gods of war, power, and order. They value strength, honor, and the rule of law. Their leader Odin is a king and a general. Then there are the Vanir of Vanaheim. They are gods of the earth, the sea, and the harvest. They command powerful, subtle magic known as Sia, a practice that delves into fate and the spirit world. They value fertility, wisdom, and prosperity. It was only a matter of time before these 2 ideologies would collide. The conflict begins not with an army, but with a single visitor, a Vanir goddess named Golveig, which translates to gold greed, arrives in Asgard. She is a sorceress of incredible power, and she speaks only of her love for gold. Her magic weaves desire into the hearts of the Aesir, and they become obsessed with wealth, their noble halls suddenly ringing with avarice and petty squabbles. The Aesir, a people of honor and battle, are horrified by this corruption they feel seeping into their very souls. They decide this influence must be purged. You watch as they seize Golveig. They hurl her into the great fire in the center of their hall. But from the ashes, she rises again, beautiful and whole. A second time they burn her, and a second time she is reborn, untouched by the flames. A third time they cast her into the fire, and still she emerges, laughing. The Aesir realize they are dealing with a power they do not understand and cannot destroy. Filled with rage and fear, Odin stands before his assembled host, raises his great spear, Gungnir, and hurls it over the heads of the Vanir gods, an ancient declaration of war. The first war in all of existence had begun. The battle that follows is long and brutal. The Aesir are mighty warriors, their axes and swords cleaving through the Vanir ranks. But the walls of Asgard, which they thought were impregnable, prove weak against Vanir magic. The sorcerers of Vanaheim chant and weave spells that crumble stone and call down storms. For every victory the Aesir win on the battlefield, the Vanir exact a terrible price on their homeland. Neither side can gain the upper hand. The war grinds to a weary stalemate. Eventually, the gods on both sides realize that their conflict will only lead to mutual destruction, leaving the cosmos vulnerable to the giants. They meet to forge a peace, and they decide the only way to ensure it is to exchange hostages, a common practice in the Norse world. The Vanir send their most cherished members, Anjar, the god of the sea and winds, and his 2 children, the radiant and powerful twins, Freya and Freya. The Aesir, in turn, send Hœnir, a god known for being tall and handsome, and the exceptionally wise Min. The Vanir are initially impressed with Hœnir, making him a chieftain, but they soon discover a strange quirk. He offers no opinions or decisions unless Mimir is by his side whispering in his ear. Without his advisor, his only response to any question is a non-committal. Let others decide. The Vanir feel they have been tricked, given a handsome puppet instead of a true leader. In a fit of fury, they decapitate Mimir and send his head back to Asgard. This shocking act of violence could have shattered the truce, but Odin's reaction is one of strange and profound magic. Instead of seeking revenge, he takes the head, embalms it with herbs to prevent it from rotting, and chants powerful spells over it. The head of Mimir is reanimated, its wisdom intact, and it becomes one of Odin's most trusted counselors for all time. Historians still debate whether this myth of the war reflects a real historical conflict, an eventual merging between two different Nordic or Germanic cults. To seal their new unity, the two tribes of gods perform one last ritual. They all spit into a single vat, and from this divine saliva, they create Kvasir, the wisest being in all the 9 realms. The Pantheon is now one, a powerful, blended family, ready to face their shared destiny. With the Pantheon united and Mimir's reanimated head now whispering counsel from a place of honor in Asgard, you might think Odin would be content. But his quest for knowledge was not a hobby, it was a burning, all-consuming obsession. You see him now, not as a king on his throne, but as a restless wanderer. Odin, the All-Father, understands a terrifying truth that others do not. He knows the cosmos is not eternal. He has glimpsed the threads woven by the Norns and knows that one day a final battle will come. His every action, every sacrifice, is driven by this singular goal, to gather enough wisdom and power to face that inevitable twilight. The counsel of Mimir's head is not enough. He needs to drink from the source itself. So, you follow him as he leaves the golden halls of Asgard and journeys to the root of Yggdrasil that lies deep within Jotunheim, the land of the giants. The air here is heavy and old. You feel the crushing weight of the ancient mountains and hear the groan of glaciers. This is enemy territory, but Odin walks it not as a warrior, but as a pilgrim. He arrives at the Well of Mimir, a pool of water that seems to hold the light of distant stars within its depths. And there, guarding it, is Mimir himself, or what remains of him, a being whose consciousness is now tied to the well and the world root. Odin, the king of the gods, approaches the ancient being and humbly asks for a single drink from the water of wisdom. Mimir looks at him, his gaze impossibly ancient. He knows the value of his well. He tells Odin that the knowledge he seeks comes at a terrible price. True understanding demands sacrifice. Odin does not hesitate. He asks Mimir to name his price, ready to give anything. Mimir's request is simple and horrifying. He asks for one of Odin's eyes. You watch the king of Asgard. There is no debate, no attempt to bargain. He understands that a physical eye, which sees only the surface of the world, is a small price to pay for an inner eye that can see the truth of all things. With grim determination, he puts his own hand to his face and gauges out his left eye. You see the flash of pain, but his will is stronger. He drops the eye into the well, and you see it sink into the depths, where it will remain forever, a silent, staring testament to the All-Father's resolve. Now deemed worthy, Mimir dips the Jollahorn, the same horn that will one day signal the start of Ragnarok, into the well and offers it to Odin. The All-Father drinks deeply. In that moment, a flood of knowledge rushes into him. He sees the secret histories of the cosmos, understands the deep magic of creation, and most importantly, he sees the future with terrifying clarity. He sees the death of gods, the breaking of the sun, and the coming of the great wolf. He now knows what he must prepare for. This act fundamentally changed him. The name Odin itself is derived from the Old Norse word, or, which means fury, inspiration, or ecstatic madness, perfectly capturing his intense, shamanic character. He often puts this knowledge to use by wandering Midgard in disguise as a simple, grey-bearded traveler, testing the hospitality and character of mortals he meets. Scholars still debate whether Odin was always the chief god of the Norse pantheon, or if he rose to prominence during the Viking Age, supplanting the older, more stable god of law, Tyr, as society became more focused on raiding and the esoteric wisdom of warrior cults. While Odin wanders the cosmos seeking hidden truths, a very different kind of power holds the line in Asgard. You hear it before you see it, a distant rumbling that shakes the very leaves on Yggdrasil. It's not a storm, not yet, but the approach of a god who embodies the storm. This is Thor, Odin's most famous son. He is the polar opposite of his father, where Odin is cunning, a god of whispers, strategy, and shadows. Thor is direct, a god of thunder, strength, and righteous fury. He is not a thinker, he is a doer. You see him now, a mountain of a man with a great, fiery red beard and eyes that crackle with energy. His presence is not subtle, it is an event. He is the champion of the gods and the sworn protector of Midgard, and his solution to most problems involves his hammer. His power is legendary, but it is amplified by three great treasures. The first and most famous is the hammer Mjolnir, forged by dwarves. It is so powerful that it can level mountains with a single blow, and it has the curious property of always returning to his hand after being thrown. Its short handle, a result of Loki's meddling during its creation, is a famous defect. To wield this immense weapon, he needs his iron gloves, Jungriper, and to double his already godlike strength, he wears a belt of power, Megangerd. When he dons all three, he is an unstoppable force of nature. His primary pastime is what you might call giant smiting. He rides across the 9 realms in a chariot pulled not by horses, but by 2 massive goats named Tangrisnir and Tangengers, which mean teeth-bearer and teeth-grinder. The sound of his chariot wheels rolling across the clouds is what mortals in Midgard hear as thunder. Thor's connection to humanity is far more direct than Odin's. While a king or a seer might pray to Odin for wisdom, a common farmer or a sailor would pray to Thor for protection from storms and for the strength to endure hardship. Amulets, shaped like his hammer, were incredibly common throughout the Viking world, worn for protection, much like a cross would be in later centuries. This popularity stems from his simple, unwavering purpose. He defends order against chaos, the hearth against the wilderness, and the world of men against the monsters that would devour it. He also has an absolutely legendary appetite. You can imagine him returning to Asgard after a long day of fighting giants, his boisterous laughter echoing through the halls as he devours whole oxen and drains barrels of mead. He is not a complicated god, but he is a reliable one. One of the most eccentric stories about him involves his goats. When on a long journey in Midgard, if he and his companions were hungry, Thor would simply slaughter and cook his goats for dinner. The only rule was that no one could break any of the bones, and all of them had to be gathered carefully onto the goatskins. The next morning, Thor would hallow the remains with Mjolnir, and the goats would spring back to life, perfectly healthy and ready to pull his chariot again, though perhaps a little wary of their master's dinner plans. It's a perfect blend of the practical and the miraculous. Academics have long debated Thor's original role, with many believing that before the Viking Age solidified his image as a warrior, he was primarily a fertility god whose hammer sanctified weddings and whose thunderstorms brought the rain necessary for good harvests. The god of the Viking was once the god of the farmer, but for every force of straightforward protection like Thor, there must be an equal and opposite force of chaos and complexity. Not all dangers to Asgard come from the outside, from the wild lands of Jotunheim. Some are born of mischief and boredom, and they walk the golden halls as a friend. You see him now, a flicker at the edge of your vision. He is Loki. He is not broad and mighty like Thor, but lean and handsome, with a restless fire in his eyes and a smile that is both charming and unsettling. He moves with a fluid grace, and his words, delivered with a silver tongue, can turn friend against friend or coax a secret from the wisest of beings. He is the god of mischief, the shapeshifter, the skywalker, the ultimate agent of change in a world that often desires stability. Loki's place among the Aesir is complicated because he is not one of them by birth. He is the son of a Jeton, a giant, yet he lives in Asgard. This is because, long ago, he and the great Odin himself performed a sacred rite, mixing their blood and becoming sworn blood brothers. Odin swore an oath that he would never accept a horn of mead in the halls of the gods unless one was also offered to Loki. This ancient unbreakable bond grants Loki a seat at the table, but he will always be the outsider, the other, which is perhaps the source of both his genius and his resentment. He is the catalyst, the one who introduces the unexpected variable into every situation. The gods often despise him for the trouble he causes, yet they rely on his unparalleled cleverness to solve problems that strength alone cannot conquer. He is both the poison and the antidote. His most famous talent is his ability to change his form. You might see him one moment as a handsome god, the next as a salmon swimming upstream, a fly on the wall, or even an elderly milkmaid. This is not just a parlor trick, it is a fundamental aspect of his being. He is not bound by a single identity. One of the most bizarre and illustrative tales of his shapeshifting is the story of Asgard's Wall. A giant offered to build an impregnable wall around Asgard in exchange for the sun, the moon, and the hand of the beautiful goddess Freya. The gods agreed, thinking the impossible deadline of a single winter would protect them. But the giant stallion, Svaelfari, was so strong that the work progressed at an alarming rate. Panicked, the gods turned to Loki to sabotage the work. Loki transformed himself into a beautiful mare and lured the stallion away into the woods for a night of passion. The giant failed to meet his deadline. Asgard was saved, and some time later, Loki himself gave birth to an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, who would become Odin's own magnificent steed. It's a curiosity that perfectly encapsulates his methods. Strange, undignified, yet undeniably effective. Scholars argue endlessly about whether Loki was originally a god, a giant, or something else entirely, a chaotic fire spirit that defies simple classification. For now, you see him as the court jester, the brilliant and necessary irritant whose jokes are beginning to carry a sharper, more dangerous edge. You turn your gaze from the trickster's shifting form and look toward the heart of Asgard's power structure, and you realize that it is not only the male gods who hold the reins of destiny. There are queens here, goddesses of immense power whose influence is felt in every corner of the 9 realms. They are not the same, these two great ladies of the Aesir and Vanir. Their power flows from different sources, like a deep, still lake and a wild, rushing river. First, you see Frigg, the wife of Odin and the queen of Asgard. She sits on her high seat in her hall, Fensalir, the Fen Halls, a place of mist and quiet contemplation. She has a quiet, unshakable authority. She is the goddess of marriage, motherhood, and the household. While these might sound like domestic duties to a modern ear, in the Norse world, the mistress of a great hall held immense power and respect. She was the keeper of the keys, the manager of all resources, the very center of the family's stability. Frigg's power is not in a hammer or a spear, it is in her knowledge. Like her husband, she is a seer of destiny. It is said that she knows the fate of every being in the cosmos, but she rarely speaks of what she sees. This silence makes her power all the more profound. She holds the future in her mind, a silent burden and an unspoken strength. You see her at her loom, her hands moving with a practiced grace. For weaving was not just a craft, but a sacred art deeply connected to the weaving of fate itself. Her handmaidens are personifications of her qualities, like Fulla, who who carries her casket of secrets, and GNR, who rides the horse Hofvapner across the sky on her errands. Her presence is a source of order and stability in a chaotic world. Then you feel a different energy, a fierce, untamed power that radiates warmth and wildness. This is Freya of the Vanir tribe, sister of Freya and daughter of Enjara. She is not the queen of Asgard, but in many ways, her influence is just as great as Freyg's. She is the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, and her beauty is so legendary that it is a constant source of desire and conflict, with giants always plotting to steal her away. But to think of her as only a goddess of love is a dangerous mistake. She is also a goddess of war, a fierce warrior who rides into battle at the head of the Valkyries. When heroes fall on the battlefield, she chooses half of the slain to live with her in her great hall, Folkvanga, the field of the people. The other half go to Odin's Valhalla. This fact alone tells you of her stature. She is equal to the Allfather in claiming the souls of the bravest warriors. Freya is also the foremost practitioner of Sira, the powerful and often volatile magic of the Vanir, which deals with telling fortunes and manipulating fate. It was she who taught this magic to Odin, a student-teacher relationship that speaks volumes about her power. She owns the magnificent necklace, Brisingamen, a treasure of impossible beauty forged by 4 dwarves, and she travels in a chariot pulled not by horses, but by 2 enormous cats. This similarity in their domains of love and foresight has led to a fascinating puzzle for scholars. Historians have long debated whether Frigg and Freya were originally one and the same goddess who, over time, split into 2 distinct figures in the mythology. As a strange and melancholic curiosity, Freya is married to a god named Opia, who often disappears on long journeys. You see her wandering the world, weeping for her lost husband, and her tears fall to the earth as drops of red gold. She is the embodiment of passion in all its forms, from desire to sorrow to the fury of battle. Leaving the warmth of the goddess's halls, you journey outward, past the protective walls of Asgard, beyond the ordered fields of Midgard, into a land that feels raw and unfinished. You are entering Jotunheim, the world of the giants. The air grows thin and cold, and the landscape itself seems hostile. The mountains here are not just rock, they are jagged teeth biting at a grey sky. The forests are dark and tangled, the trees ancient and menacing, and the rivers are choked with grinding ice. This is a realm of raw power, a place that remembers the time before the gods imposed their will upon the cosmos. This is the home of the Jitna, and to call them simple villains would be like calling a hurricane or an earthquake evil. They are not evil. They are a force of nature. You see them in the distance. They are figures of immense scale, their forms often mirroring the landscape they inhabit. Some seem carved from living ice. These are the frost giants. Others look like walking mountains, the mountain giants. They are the descendants of Ymir, the original inhabitants of the universe, and they have never forgotten that the gods built this world from the body of their ancestor. Their grudge is as old as creation itself. This animosity is the engine that drives so many of the myths, a constant state of cold war that frequently erupts into open conflict. Thor, as you know, spends the majority of his time patrolling the borders of this realm. His hammer, Melonir, a constant and hated sound in the ears of the giants. He is the relentless enforcer of the gods' order, and they are the endless tide of chaos that pushes back. But the relationship is more complicated than simple enmity. You must remember that the gods and giants are kin. Odin's own mother, Bestla, was a giantess. Thor's lover and the mother of his son, Magni, is the giantess Jarnsaxa. The gods frequently travel into Jotunheim seeking wives, wisdom, or adventure, and just as frequently, they are met with cunning deception rather than brute force. In the great fortress of Utgard, you see a giant king named Utgard-Loki, a master of illusion who once made a complete fool of Thor. He challenged the mighty thunder god to a series of seemingly simple contests. Thor failed to drain a drinking horn that was secretly connected to the ocean. He failed to lift a cat that was actually the world's serpent, Jormungandr, in disguise. And he lost a wrestling match to an old woman who was the personification of old age itself. This story reveals a crucial truth about the Jitna. They are not just strong, they are ancient, clever, and possess a deep magic the gods often underestimate. A particularly eccentric giant was Rungna, who was said to have a head and a heart made of hard stone. His heart was not shaped like yours, but had 3 sharp, pointed corners, a famous and bizarre detail in Norse art. He once got drunk in Asgard and threatened to kill all the gods and carry Freya and Frigg off to Jotunheim, a boast that led to a fatal duel with Thor. Historians often debate the true nature of the giants in the Norse worldview. Were they representations of the harsh and unforgiving forces of nature that people in Scandinavia had to contend with daily, such as winter, avalanches, and the crushing ice of the sea? Or were they perhaps mythological memories of other rival peoples or gods that were eventually demonized and cast as monstrous outsiders? Whatever their origin, you feel their presence now, a constant, looming pressure on the borders of the ordered world. A reminder that the wild chaos of Ginnungagap was never truly vanquished, it was just pushed back, and it is waiting for its chance to return. The giants of Jotunheim are a known threat, an external pressure that the gods have learned to manage, mostly through the liberal application of Thor's hammer. But as you turn your attention back toward Asgard, you become aware of a far more insidious danger, one that has been festering in secret. It comes from Loki. While he walks the halls of Asgard as a blood brother to Odin, he has kept a second life, a second family, hidden away in the darkest corners of the giant's realm. In Jotunheim, with the giantess Angrboda, the bringer of sorrow, Loki has fathered 3 children, and they are not gods. They are monsters, born of chaos and destined for a terrible purpose. The gods of Asgard, through Odin's foresight and the whispers of prophecy, learn of their existence, and a cold fear grips them for the first time. The prophecy is clear. These 3 children will be instrumental in the destruction of the gods at Ragnarok. Faced with this terrifying knowledge, Odin decides they must act. The gods travel to Jotunheim and bring the 3 monstrous children back to Asgard, not to kill them, which might have been the simpler solution, but to control them, to try and subvert the fate the Norns had woven. The first child you see is a serpent, Jormungandr. Even as a youth, it is so vast that it takes several gods to carry him. His scales shimmer with a venomous green, and his cold, reptilian eyes hold an ancient malice. The second child is a daughter, Hel. Her appearance is shocking and disturbing. One side of her body is that of a beautiful, fair-skinned woman, but the other side is the blotchy, decaying flesh of a corpse. Her expression is eternally downcast and grim. The third child is a wolf pup, Fenrir. At first, he seems almost endearing, but he is growing at a horrifying rate. Each day, he doubles in size, his muscles coiling like great ropes, his teeth sharpening into daggers, and a savage, untamable fire burns in his eyes. The gods decide to deal with each child according to their nature. Odin takes the great serpent Jormungandr and hurls him into the vast ocean that encircles Midgard. There, the serpent grows and grows, until he is so immense that he can wrap his body around the entire world and bite his own tail. He becomes the Midgard serpent, forever biting and churning in the deep, a constant, encircling threat. To Hel, Odin gives dominion over the realm of the dead in Niflheim. She is cast down into the darkness to rule over all those who die of sickness or old age, a grim queen for a gloomy kingdom. But Fenrir is the greatest problem. He remains in Asgard, and only the brave god of war, Tyr, dares to feed him. The gods know they cannot let him run free, so they attempt to bind him. They present it as a game, a test of his strength. They bind him with a great iron fetter called Lulgiginga, but with a simple flex, Fenrir shatters it. They then forge a second, much stronger chain called Drami, but he breaks that one too with even greater ease. In desperation, the gods send a messenger to the dwarves of Svartalfheim, commissioning a chain that cannot be broken. The dwarves craft a magical fetter named Gleipnir. It looks like a silken ribbon, but it is made from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. When the gods present this ribbon to Fenrir, the wolf is suspicious. He agrees to be bound only if one of the gods will place their hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. One by one, the gods refuse, their fear overriding their honor. Only Tyr steps forward, placing his right hand between the wolf's jaws. As Fenrir is bound and realizes the silken ribbon is unbreakable, he snaps his mouth shut, severing Tyr's hand at the wrist. Scholars often discuss whether the story of Loki's children is an organic part of the mythology or a later, more literary creation designed to neatly package all of Ragnarok's key antagonists. For now, you see the bound wolf howling in his rage, the world serpent coiled in the deep, and the queen of the dead in her hall, all waiting for the day of their revenge. The gods have not averted their fate, they have only given it a reason to hate them. With the monstrous children of Loki bound, banished, or otherwise contained, you might feel a sense of relief in Asgard, but the gods know this is merely a reprieve. Odin, with the wisdom he gained from Mimir, well understands that the final battle is still coming. He cannot prevent it, but he can prepare for it. And his grand strategy does not rely on magic chains or banishment. It relies on building an army of the dead. You now turn your gaze to the most famous hall in all of Asgard, a place whose name echoes with glory and the clash of steel. This is Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain. You see it from a distance, its great roof shingled not with tile, but with gleaming golden shields. Its rafters are spears, and its benches are covered in chainmail. It is not just a building, it is a statement, a warrior's paradise. The entrance is guarded by a great gate, and wolves and eagles, beasts of battle, are perched above it. This is Odin's personal hall, and it is here that he gathers his chosen warriors. How does a mortal warrior earn a place at this eternal feast? The price is simple. They must die bravely in battle. You watch the fields of Midgard, where men clash in a frenzy of iron and blood, and hovering above the fray, you see them, the Valkyries. They are the choosers of the slain, beautiful and terrifying warrior women in gleaming armor, riding horses that gallop through the sky. They are Odin's agents, and their task is to select the most heroic, the most ferocious, the most worthy warriors at the very moment of their death. One moment a Viking is roaring his defiance as a sword finds his heart. The next, he is being lifted from the battlefield by a Valkyrie, his wounds miraculously healed, on his way to a glorious afterlife. Upon arriving in Valhalla, these chosen warriors, known as the Einherjar, are greeted as heroes. The hall is vast, with 540 doors, each so wide that 800 warriors can march through them shoulder to shoulder. Inside, a feast is perpetually laid out. They are served meat from the great boar Esrimna, who is cooked and eaten every single night, only to be whole and alive again the next morning. They drink endless horns of the finest mead, which flows not from a barrel, but from the udder of the goat Heyrin, who nibbles on the leaves of Yggdrasil. It seems like a perfect paradise, an eternity of food, drink, and camaraderie, but it is a paradise with a grim purpose. Every single day, at the crowing of the rooster Gullinkambi, the Einherjar arm themselves. They pour out of the great doors into the fields of Asgard, and they fight. They spend the entire day in a joyous, brutal battle, hacking at each other with axes and swords, testing their skills and indulging their warrior spirit. They inflict grievous wounds upon each other, lopping off limbs and heads in a spectacular display of martial prowess. And at the end of the day, as the sun sets, all their wounds magically heal, and they return to the great hall, laughing and clapping each other on the back to feast and drink once more. This is their training. Every day is a dress rehearsal for the final, real battle. They are not here to rest. They are here to become the ultimate fighting force that will stand with Odin on the fields of Vigrid when Ragnarok finally comes. There is a scholarly debate as to whether the concept of Valhalla was a widespread belief among all Norse people, or if it was primarily the ideology of the elite warrior class, a way to encourage bravery and loyalty to a chieftain who could promise a glorious afterlife. For a common farmer, the idea of an eternity of fighting might have seemed less like a paradise and more like a terrible chore. While Odin prepares for the physical conflict of Ragnarok by gathering warriors, he knows that battles are not won by steel alone. There is another kind of power in the Nine Realms, a deeper and more subtle force that flows through the very fabric of creation. It is the power of the runes. You see Odin now, not as a king or a general, but as a shaman, a seeker of the ultimate mystical knowledge. He looks upon Yggdrasil, the great world tree, and understands that its branches and roots are not just physical, they are inscribed with cosmic secrets. To gain this knowledge, he knows he must undergo another immense sacrifice, one that mirrors his ordeal at Mimir's well, but is far more severe. It is a sacrifice of himself, to himself. You watch as he takes his own spear, Gungnir, and pierces his side. Then, he hangs himself from a great branch of Yggdrasil. For 9 days and 9 nights, he hangs there, suspended between the worlds, battered by the winds, without food or water. He is in a state of living death, a shamanic trance where the boundaries between worlds blur. On the 9th night, at the very edge of his endurance, as he peers down into the deepest abyss, the secrets are revealed to him. With a great cry, he sees them, the runes. They are not merely letters of an alphabet. They are symbols of fundamental cosmic forces. He scoops them up, absorbing their power and their meaning into his very being. This act of self-sacrifice makes him the master of runic magic. The Poetic Edda, one of our main sources for these myths, describes this event in a famous passage where Odin speaks of his ordeal, making it clear this was a willed and conscious act of self-immolation for the sake of power. Now you see how this magic is used. The runes can be carved into stone to create monuments that speak across the ages. They can be inscribed on a sword's hilt to grant it victory, or on a drinking horn to protect against poison. They can be used for healing, for cursing, for calming the sea, or for speaking with the dead. Each rune has a name and a meaning: Fehu for wealth, Urus for strength, Thurisas for giants and destructive force. To know the runes is to know the building blocks of reality. This knowledge is not held exclusively by Odin. It is taught to a select few. You see the seers, the Valva, women who practice the magical art of seer. They sit on high platforms, entering trances, enchanting to see the future. They might cast runic stones, reading the patterns they form to answer questions about a coming harvest or the outcome of a battle. This practice was both revered and feared in the Norse world. A particularly eccentric curiosity is that while Odin was the master of runic magic, the practice of seer, which he learned from Freya, was often considered unmanly and shameful for men to engage in, as it involved forms of trance and spirit work that were culturally associated with the feminine. Odin's willingness to embrace this practice, despite the stigma, shows the incredible lengths he would go to for knowledge. Historians and archaeologists continue to debate the precise magical uses of runes. While the myths are filled with grand magical acts, the actual runic inscriptions found on artifacts are often more mundane, simply stating a name, a dedication, or a memorial. This suggests there may have been a significant gap between the mythological understanding of runes as cosmic forces and their everyday practical use as a writing system. You now understand that Odin's army of Einherjar is his fist, but the runes are his mind, another crucial weapon in the desperate unfolding chess game against fate. As you contemplate the deep magic of the runes, you are drawn to a different kind of creative force. one that lies not in the mystical ether but deep within the earth. You journey down, past the roots of Yggdrasil, into the dark and echoing caverns of Svartalfheim. The air here is warm with the heat of 1,000 forges, and the constant, rhythmic sound of hammers striking anvils fills your ears. This is the realm of the dwarves, and they are the undisputed masters of craftsmanship in all the 9 realms. They are not warriors or kings, but they are makers, and the treasures they create have the power to shape destinies. You see them now, short, stout, and immensely strong, with long beards and a serious, focused intensity in their eyes. They are beings of the earth, born from the maggots that crawled in the flesh of the slain giant Ymir, a humble origin that belies their incredible talent. The story of how the gods acquired their most famous treasures is, like so many things, a direct result of Loki's mischief. One night, in a particularly whimsical mood, Loki decided it would be hilarious to sneak into the chambers of Thor's wife, the beautiful goddess Sif, who is famous for her magnificent golden hair. While she slept, Loki cut off every last strand, leaving her completely bald. When Thor discovered this, his rage was so immense that it threatened to shatter the very foundations of Asgard. He seized Loki, who you can imagine was looking significantly less amused now, and threatened to break every bone in his body. To save his own skin, Loki swore a solemn oath that he would go to the dwarves and have them fashion new hair for Sif, hair made of pure gold that would grow just like real hair. Loki travels down to Svartalfheim and finds 2 dwarf brothers known as the Sons of Ivaldi. They not only agree to forge the golden hair, but they also create 2 other masterpieces, the ship SK Blarnir, which can be folded up and put in one's pocket but is large enough to hold all the gods, and the spear Gungnir, which never misses its target. Not content to leave well enough alone, Loki's arrogance gets the better of him. He seeks out 2 other dwarf brothers, Brokkr and Sindri, and wagers his own head that they cannot create 3 treasures to equal the first. The brothers accept the challenge and begin their work at the forge. As Sindri works the bellows, Loki, in the form of a gadfly, repeatedly bites his brother Brokkr to distract him. Despite the painful bites, Brokkr holds steady. They produce the golden boar Gullinbursti, which can run through air and water and glows in the dark. They forge the golden ring Dropner, from which 8 identical rings of equal value drop every 9th night. For the final treasure, a mighty hammer, Loki bites Brokkr on the eyelid so fiercely that blood obscures his vision. For a crucial moment, Brokkr stops pumping the bellows to wipe his eye. The result is Melania, the greatest weapon in the 9 realms, but with one flaw: its handle is shorter than it should have been. When the treasures are presented to the gods in Asgard, they unanimously declare that Brokkr and Sindri have won the wager. Thor's hammer, despite its short handle, is the greatest treasure of all, and now the dwarves have come to claim Loki's head. Loki, ever the trickster, points out that he wagered his head, but not his neck, and they have no right to cut it. Thwarted, the dwarves settle for a different punishment. They use an awl and a thong to sew Loki's mouth shut, a fitting, if temporary, punishment for his boastful and deceitful words. Historians see these myths as a way to explain the origins of divine attributes, personifying the gods' powers into tangible, magical items. The story also reinforces the dwarves' role as the indispensable, yet often exploited, master artisans of the cosmos. You leave the ringing anvils and fiery forges of the dwarves behind, the memory of their brilliant creations still glowing in your mind. But your path now leads you downward, away from the light and the heat, into a profound and bone-deep chill. You are on the road to hell, and it is a long and arduous journey. The path, called Helvegard, slopes eternally downward, and the further you go, the more the sounds of life fade away, replaced by a deep and unsettling silence. You travel for days in an endless twilight, until you reach a great, roaring river named Jael, which means scream. The water is not water, but a torrent of freezing, clattering weapons. The only way across is a single, arching bridge, Jalabra, which is paved with gleaming gold. It is guarded by a skeletal giantess named Morju Ah, who demands to know your name and your business before you can pass. She tells you that the bridge groans more under a single living person than under a whole army of the dead, for the dead have no weight. Once across the bridge, you come to a great gate. Chained before it is a monstrous hound named Garma, his chest perpetually slick with blood. He lets out a chilling howl that echoes in the stillness, a sound meant to keep the dead in and the living out. You pass through the gates and enter the realm of hell itself. Inside, the silence is the first thing you notice. It is not peaceful, it is a physical weight, the absolute absence of joy, laughter, or song. The air is damp and cold, and it carries the faint, sweet smell of damp earth and decay. This is not the fiery pit of punishment that other belief systems might imagine. It is a place of profound gloom, a vast, shadowy, and cold emptiness. You see her then, sitting on a throne in her great hall, Eljanir, which means sleek damp. She is Hel, the daughter of Loki, the queen of this domain. You see the strange and terrible duality of her form. One half of her is a beautiful woman, with skin like cream and eyes full of a deep sadness. The other half is a rotting corpse, her skin the mottled blue and black of decay, her features slack and lifeless. She does not rage or threaten. Her power is in her absolute stillness and melancholy. Her subjects are the pale, silent shades of all those who did not die a glorious death in battle. They are the ones who died of sickness, of old age, of accident, a straw death, as it was called. The farmers, the merchants, the children, the women who died in childbirth, they all end up here. It is the default afterlife. This is the great, defining contrast to Valhalla. There is no feast here. Hell's dish is named hunger, and her knife is named salt, famine. Her bed is Kekar, sick bed, and her bed curtains are, like Jandabal, gleaming disaster. The hospitality is, shall we say, minimal. This is not a punishment for being wicked, but simply the consequence of living and dying an ordinary life. The Norse worldview did not hinge on a moral judgment of good versus evil in the afterlife, but on a judgment of glory versus obscurity. Scholars have long debated whether this grim depiction of hell was the original Norse view, or if it was darkened over time by the influence of Christian teachings about hell. Some suggest that hell may have once been a more neutral place, a simple underground continuation of existence that only later acquired its more terrifying and bleak characteristics. For now, you feel the crushing weight of this silent kingdom, an eternity of quiet, cold waiting. And you understand why every Viking warrior would rather face a dozen swords than the prospect of fading away in their bed. In the world of the gods, filled as it is with grim warriors and scheming wanderers, there is one point of pure, uncomplicated light. You see him now, and it is like watching the sun rise. This is Balder the Beautiful, the son of Odin and Frigg. He is the god of light, joy, and purity, and he is loved by every living thing in all the 9 realms. Where he walks, flowers bloom, and his smile can soothe the most troubled heart. His hall, Breidablik, is a place where no falsehood or evil can enter. He is the personification of hope, the proof that even in a world destined for a violent end, there can be perfect goodness. But a shadow has begun to fall over this radiant being. Balder is plagued by terrible nightmares, dark premonitions that whisper of his own death. The light in Asgard begins to dim with his anxiety, and a cold fear spreads among the gods. His mother, Frigg, is beside herself with worry. Determined to protect her beloved son, she devises a plan of breathtaking ambition. She will make the universe itself promise to keep him safe. You watch her on her epic journey. She travels to every corner of the 9 realms. She speaks to fire and to water, and they swear an oath not to harm Balder. She takes an oath from iron and all other metals. She speaks to stones and to the earth itself. She takes an oath from trees, from diseases, from poisons, and from every kind of animal, from the great bears to the smallest snakes. She secures a promise from everything, leaving, she believes, nothing to chance. With these oaths in place, a great sense of relief settles over Asgard. Balder is now invincible. To celebrate, the gods invent a new game. They gather in their assembly place, and Balder stands in the middle while they all take turns throwing things at him. It is a joyous scene. One god hurls a massive boulder, and it bounces harmlessly off Balder's chest. Thor throws an axe with all his might, and it clatters to the ground without leaving a scratch. They throw spears and shoot arrows, all to no effect. Laughter echoes through the halls as everyone marvels at the beloved god's newfound invulnerability. But one person is not laughing. Loki watches this scene, and the sight of this universal love and joy fills his heart with a bitter, jealous poison. He sees an opportunity for the ultimate act of mischief. Disguising himself as an old woman, he approaches Frigg. He asks her what all the commotion is about. Frigg, proud and happy, explains that they are celebrating Balder, for everything in creation has sworn an oath not to harm him. The disguised Loki asks with false innocence, "Everything? Did you really not miss a single thing?" Frigg, in a moment of tragic pride, confides in the old woman. "Well," she says, "there was one little thing that seemed too young and harmless to ask for an oath. It is a little shrub that grows west of Valhalla. They call it mistletoe. This is all Loki needs." He leaves Frigg, finds the insignificant shrub, and from its wood, he fashions a small, sharp dart. He returns to the games, where he sees Balder's brother, the blind god, Hr, standing off to the side, unable to participate. Loki approaches him. "Why don't you also honor your brother?" he asks. Hr replies sadly that he cannot see where to throw. "Let me help you," Loki says, with venomous kindness, and he places the mistletoe dart in Hr's hand and guides his arm. Hr throws the dart. It flies silently through the air and strikes Balder, who falls to the ground, dead. A silence falls over Asgard, so profound and absolute that it feels like the end of the world. The gods are so stricken with grief that, as the stories say, they cannot speak a single word to voice their sorrow. The sun has been extinguished from their world. Many scholars have noted the parallels between Balder's story and other myths of dying gods in different cultures, though they debate whether this points to direct influence or a more universal human theme of losing the light. The first and most terrible domino of Ragnarok has just fallen. The profound, stunned silence that followed Balder's death has now broken, replaced by a sound that is somehow worse, the sound of open, unrestrained weeping. The grief is a physical thing now, a suffocating blanket that has smothered all laughter and song in the Golden City. You watch as the gods prepare the greatest funeral the 9 realms have ever seen. They carry Balder's body down to the shore, to his magnificent ship, Hringhorni, the largest of all vessels. They intend to use it as his funeral pyre, but the ship is so immense and heavy with their sorrow that not even the strongest of the Aesir can move it into the water. In their desperation, they send for a giantess named Hyrrokin, who arrives riding a great wolf with vipers for reins. With a single, mighty push, she sends the ship roaring into the sea, the logs grinding with such force that fire sparks from them. Thor, in a rage, born of his grief, is offended by her show of strength and nearly crushes her skull with Mjolnir, before the other gods intervene. As they place Balder on the pyre, a dwarf named Lit runs in front of Thor's feet, and the thunder god, in his blind sorrow, simply kicks him into the flames. Balder's wife, Nanna, dies of a broken heart on the spot, and they place her on the pyre beside him. It is a scene of absolute despair, but there is one final, desperate hope. Odin's son, Hermo, are the bold volunteers for an impossible mission. He mounts Odin's 8-legged steed, Sleipnir, and rides for 9 days and 9 nights through valleys so dark he can see nothing. until he reaches the bridge over the river Gile. He leaps the gates of hell and finds Balder seated in the Hall of the Dead. Ermoar pleads with the goddess Hel to release Balder, telling her of the sorrow that has fallen over all of creation. Hel, in her cold and gloomy way, agrees to a condition. Balder may return to the living, she says, if every single thing in all the 9 realms, living and dead, weeps for him. So the gods send messengers across the cosmos, and everything weeps. Men weep, animals weep, the earth weeps, stones weep, and trees weep, just as you can see dew on them after a frost. The universe itself mourns. But on their way back, the messengers find a single giantess sitting in a cave. Her name is Thek, and she refuses. Let Hel hold what she has, she sneers. Thek will weep dry tears for Baldr's burial, and with that, the bargain is broken. The gods know instantly that this giantess was none other than Loki in disguise. The god's grief now curdles into a cold, terrifying rage. The hunt is on. Loki, knowing his life is forfeit, flees to a remote mountain. There he builds a house with 4 doors so he can watch for his pursuers in all directions. During the day, he transforms himself into a salmon and hides in a nearby waterfall. You see the gods closing in, led by the wise Kvasir, who sees the ash from a burnt net in Loki's abandoned hearth and deduces his hiding place. The gods fashion a net and begin to drag the river. Twice Loki evades them, but the 3rd time, as he tries to leap over the net, Thor grabs him by the tail. This, the story says, is why salmon have a tapering tail. They drag him, thrashing and struggling, into a dark cave. They also capture 2 of Loki's other sons, Vali and Nafi. The punishment they devise is beyond cruel. They transform Vali into a ravenous wolf, who immediately turns and tears his own brother Nafi to pieces. They then take Nafi's entrails and use them to bind Loki to 3 great sharp stones. The entrails magically turn into fetters of iron. To complete the torture, the goddess Sky, whose father was killed by Loki, places a giant venomous snake on a rock above him, so that its poison drips eternally onto his face. Scholars continue to debate whether the specifics of Loki's eternal torment, which has clear parallels to the Greek myth of Prometheus, were influenced by Christian concepts of hell and the punishment of Satan. Loki's loyal wife, Sigyn, sits by his side, holding a bowl to catch the venom. But when the bowl is full and she turns to empty it, the poison drips onto Loki's face. His screams and convulsions are so violent that they cause the earth itself to shake. This is what mortals in Midgard call an earthquake. He is bound, but not broken. You can feel his hatred growing with every drop of poison, an acid that will one day dissolve the world. With Loki bound and his monstrous children awaiting their moment, a strange and terrible quiet settles over the 9 realms. But it is not a quiet of peace. It is the quiet of a world holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable snap. The death of Balder was not just a tragedy, it was a fundamental breaking of the cosmic order. The sun in the sky seems weaker, the laughter in the halls of Asgard is gone, and the bonds that hold society together are beginning to fray. You can feel the change in the air itself as a new and unnatural chill begins to creep into the world. This is the beginning of Fimbulwinter, the Great Winter, the final and most terrible omen of the coming end. It begins with a winter like no other. The snow does not fall in gentle blankets. It is driven by relentless, howling winds that come from all directions at once. The cold is not just a seasonal discomfort. It is a physical entity, a presence that seeps into stone and freezes the marrow in your bones. And it does not end. The spring that should follow never arrives. The summer sun remains hidden behind a permanent, slate-grey sky. For one entire year, the world is locked in this brutal, unending winter. The harvests fail completely. The livestock freeze in the fields. The great forests, which once provided fuel and shelter, are now just skeletal armies of ice-encrusted trees. Famine grips Midgard, and the survivors are forced to do the unthinkable. As the second year of this winter begins, the bonds of kinship and community, the very bedrock of Norse society, completely dissolve. You see brother turning against brother for a crust of bread. Parents sell their children for a handful of grain. Oaths are broken, hospitality is forgotten, and honor becomes a meaningless word. The world descends into a desperate, savage war of all against all. It is an age of axes, an age of swords, an age of shattered shields, an age of wind, and an age of wolves, before the world plunges into ruin. There is no law but survival, and no mercy to be found. This continues for a second year, and then a third, 3 winters in a row, with no summer in between, until the very memory of warmth is a forgotten dream. The world of men has effectively destroyed itself from within, long before the armies of chaos arrive at the gates. In the heavens, a parallel drama unfolds. 2 great wolves, Skull and Hoti, have been chasing the sun and the moon across the sky since the beginning of time. For eons, the celestial bodies have managed to stay just ahead of their pursuers. But in the weakness and chaos of Fimbulwinter, the wolves finally begin to gain ground. The sun's light grows dimmer, and the moon's path becomes more erratic as the slavering jaws of the beasts snap at their heels. The final chase has begun. Scholars have long connected the myth of Fimbulwinter with a real-world climate event. Around the year 536 AD, a massive volcanic eruption, or possibly a series of them, threw a veil of dust into the atmosphere, causing a volcanic winter that led to widespread crop failures, famine, and social upheaval across the globe, especially in Northern Europe. It is highly likely that the memory of this catastrophic climate event, passed down through generations, became the mythological basis for the great winter that precedes the end of the world. You feel the deep, gnawing despair of this age. The heroes in Valhalla continue to train, but the world they are meant to defend is already a frozen, blood-soaked wasteland. The stage is now set. The long, agonizing wait of Fimbulwinter is over, and the final sequence of events now unfolds with terrifying speed and destructive certainty. You feel a massive tremor that shakes the entire cosmos, a seismic event that signifies the breaking of all chains and the unmaking of the known universe. This is Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. The bound chains of the monstrous children of Loki finally snap. Fenrir, the great wolf, breaks free of his silken bonds. His howl is so immense that it echoes through all 9 realms, a thunderous war cry of pure, ancient hatred. Fire spills from his eyes and nostrils, and he races across the ravaged earth, his jaws gaping wide, the upper jaw against the sky, the lower jaw scraping the ground, ready to devour everything in his path. Meanwhile, the Midgard serpent, Jormungandr, thrashes in the deep ocean that encircles the world. His titanic movements create tidal waves that crash against the devastated shores of Midgard. He spits his venom in great torrents, poisoning the land, the sea, and the air. The giant boat Naglfar, made entirely from the unclipped fingernails and toenails of the dead, finally breaks free from its moorings and sails, piloted by the giant Rime, carrying an army of frost giants eager for battle. And from the east, the guardian of the fiery realm of Muspelheim, the giant Surtur rides forth with a massive army of fire giants, swinging his blazing sword that glows brighter than the sun. The final army of chaos has arrived. The gods, prepared though they are, know this is the end. The watchman of the gods, Heimdall, lifts his mighty horn, Jollahorn, the same one Mimir dipped into the well, and he blows a single, shattering blast. It is a sound that cannot be ignored, a sound that calls the gods to their final assembly on the field of Vjr, a plain said to be 100 leagues wide. The Einherjar pour out of the 540 doors of Valhalla, marching in perfect formation, their blades shining one last time. Odin leads them, his golden helmet gleaming, his spear Gungnir ready. The battles are personal, mythic showdowns. Odin strides forward to meet Fenrir, the wolf destined to swallow him. Despite his wisdom and his power, Odin is unable to escape his fate. The giant wolf lunges, and the Allfather, the seeker of knowledge, is consumed whole. The loss of their king is devastating, but the fighting continues. Thor, the mighty protector, faces his mortal enemy, the world's serpent, Jormungandr. It is a battle of brute force against primal chaos. Thor slays the serpent with his hammer, but the victory is fatal. He is poisoned by the creature's venom, and after walking just 9 steps, the thunder god falls dead. Tyr, the one-handed god of law, faces the hound Garma, and they kill each other in a frenzy of claws and steel. Even the Blood Brothers find their terrible closure. Loki is finally free to face his nemesis, Heimdall, and they too slay each other. The final act is reserved for Surtur, the fire giant. After most of the gods and giants have fallen, Surtur brings his flaming sword to bear against the remnants of the world. He sets fire to the entire cosmos. Fire engulfs Yggdrasil, which groans and burns until the very roots of the world are consumed. The sea boils, the sky cracks open, and the mountains crumble into dust. Every living thing is consumed by the flames, and the world sinks back into the original primordial ocean. This apocalyptic conclusion, where the gods are not victorious but are overthrown by forces of chaos, is a unique feature of the Norse worldview, one that fundamentally differs from linear, optimistic narratives found in many other religions. Historians still widely debate whether this destructive view of the cosmos, that the gods must perish for the world to be cleansed, reflects a deep-seated fatalism in the ancient Norse culture. You watch the final, consuming fire, and then only silence and the dark ocean remain. The fire is gone. The screams are silent. The great and terrible battle is over, and the cosmos has been unmade, sinking back into the dark and quiet waters from which it first came. You are floating again, in a void, but this one feels different from the yawning emptiness of Ginnungagap. That was a void of potential, of a story not yet begun. This is a void of completion, of a story that has reached its violent, definitive end. There is a deep, profound peace in the silence. It is the stillness of a slate wiped clean. But just as before, the stillness does not last forever. The end of one story is merely the prelude to the next. Slowly, as if in a cosmic dawn, a new world begins to rise from the sea. It is not the old world, built from the corpse of a giant and scarred by millennia of conflict. This new earth is pristine, glistening, and impossibly green. The fields are fertile without ever having known a plough, and waterfalls cascade down mountains that have never felt the bite of Fimbulwinter's ice. The air is clean and sweet. In this new world, evil and sorrow have no place. A new sun, a daughter of the one swallowed by the wolf's skull, now rides across the sky, her light gentle and warm. And on this new earth, you see figures begin to walk. The survivors, from the gloomy depths of hell, to gods emerge, blinking in the new light. It is Balder, the beautiful, returned from the dead, his radiance undimmed. And with him is his brother, the blind god, Hr, his unwitting killer. In this new world, their old tragedy has been washed away, and they walk together in peace. They are not alone. 2 of Odin's sons, Vr and Voli, survived the fire. Vr, the silent god, who avenged his father by tearing the great wolf, Fenrir, asunder, stands as a testament to vengeance fulfilled. And 2 of Thor's sons, Mori and Magni, Wrath and Strength, have also endured. They walk through the tall, dew-covered grass of a field called Iravala, where Asgard once stood, and they find their father's hammer, Mjolnir, lying untarnished, ready to protect this new world. As the gods gather, they find something glittering in the new grass. They are the golden game pieces, the very same ones the original Aesir played with in the innocent dawn of the world. They sit and use them to speak of the past, of the Midgard serpent, of the binding of Fenrir, of Odin's sacrifices, and of the great and terrible destiny they all faced. It is a moment of quiet reflection, of remembering all that was lost to gain this new beginning. But a world needs more than gods. Deep within the wood of the old world tree, which somehow endured the flames,